Hi everybody. I am taking a few moments or however long I have before my 4-year-old decides to demand my attention again. And I'm going to talk about how I run a business and support my family and travel the world, I guess, too. I should put that in the title. When I live on faith. So I get this question asked a lot by people that I mentor, by people that I just ran into, by other entrepreneurs. The beginning of this year of 2020, I did take a online, I guess, business course, like a group coaching program that had to do with starting my own business. But I found that I was very different from the model that most people follow. So this is kind of what I want to talk about. And what more authentic way to talk about it than while I roll myself a morning smoke and have my coffee. So cheers to you guys. If I get interrupted, this is life. My older daughter is sleeping and my younger son is eating a breakfast cookie because he remembered that I saved him one and that's what he wanted for breakfast. So we'll see how long that lasts. Anyway, so I am a mentor. However, I do not book appointments necessarily. I mean, if it needs to be, I will. But I live on flow. I live in the flow of life. I don't live in a schedule. I refuse to ever go back and work for the man and basically pause my life to go do something that somebody else wants. It's the same with my work. I intuitively mentor, which means if I'm not intuitively aligned at the moment, I'm not really any good to anybody. Because if I'm distracted or existing in some sort of fear lesson that I'm going through or whatever, then I can't really help you. It's the same with my belief anyways. If I go to somebody to do any Reiki work or anything like that, which is why I don't really go to other people for work. There's so many of us that are going through so much healing, myself included, that it's really easy to transfer those energies to whoever you're trying to heal if you're not aware of it. I hope you guys can hear me, by the way. Feel free to leave a comment and tell me if you can hear me. But I find that for me anyways, when I flow and I work when I'm meant to work, the messages are clear, the channels are clear. I should turn off my ringer because you guys are going to hear it beep all the time. The channels are clear, the timing is appropriate, and that's another thing I think I've mentioned in my videos is that I don't respond on demand, I respond based on my intuition. And I have a hard time dealing with that because I feel this like human guilt that you guys, somebody asked me a question like 2 weeks ago and I haven't responded and then I finally do. And although the answer is so detailed, I feel like, it's too little too late. But almost always I get a response back saying, wow, like your response was timely. And so it's helping me build my practice of working intuitively with the human confirmation that I'm receiving that I'm never late. I am never delayed. The message comes exactly when we're supposed to. So let me backtrack a little bit. I'm a single mom of 2 kids, and my spiritual awakening was kind of forced on me out of necessity. So me living in faith is not religious. I don't believe in a separate entity higher than myself. If you want to say I believe in God, well, God to me is also universe. God to me is also my higher self. God to me is you. God to me is my kids. God to me is Gaia, everything. I believe that, yes, we have free will because we live in duality. Hi, Kat. But that's how we play and experience so many emotions. I think at the end of the day, there is a certain series of events that is going to occur or an end result, should we say, but we're not supposed to know it because we're supposed to be playing with free will. So that kind of ties into my faith. So when I was in my lowest point, I had no money, I had no job, I had all my finances tied up in my divorce, I had a car I couldn't afford to pay, I had family that didn't want to help me. Okay, Kat, you gotta go. Thank you. It was my own reality, though. It's not really to blame anybody. Okay, you know what? This cat wants attention. Come on, buddy. Come down, because you're going to step on my smokes and my coffee. I got to a point where I stopped being a victim. I stopped saying, I don't have this, I don't have this. I stopped saying, well, my circumstances, have to have this or blah, 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 blah. I started looking at the fact that I have gone through so many things in my life and I am 100% successful at overcoming, clearly, because here I am, right? All of us are 100% successful at overcoming anything that we have to overcome because we are here. So all of it is a lesson, and how we perceive it is going to be whether it's good or bad. And this is really the fundamental basis of everything that I do is perception. So how do I afford to travel? It's perception. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my God, how am I going to afford this? How am I going to afford that? How am I going to afford that? I utilize my past experiences to, I guess, motivate me in the present, because I've lived as a single mom where my rent and my car and my gas payment alone was way more than any of my travel expenses right now. And I don't even travel often. I travel every 3 to 6 months. So realistically, I'm saving money by traveling. But if my mindset hadn't switched, I wouldn't be able to say that. Going back into my service, I started really channeling my purpose to helping others back in, I would say, 2016. Yeah, around the fall of 2016. And so I had already been on the internet doing a few years of research. I had already been online and kind of finding a few people in my tribe and getting the help I needed. A lot of the help I needed at the time was getting over like narcissistic abuse and codependency habits and all that kind of stuff. So my spiritual gifts came through and I started helping without boundaries, which is what my codependency healing needed me to practice. Boundaries for me were lacking in the sense that I just wanted to help everybody. And so I became overwhelmed. Here I am, a single mom at the time with a young baby. I think he was like a year and a half old. And no, not even a year old, and a 7-year-old, in this monstrous house I was kind of left because an ex and I had broken up and I couldn't really afford it, but yet I could. And then I was helping people because I know when helping people it also kind of assists your energy, it helps you. But I got ill, I got severely ill. So what happened was I took on everybody's energy, I took on everybody's emotions, I took on everybody's hurt and healing that they need, and wanting to help them ended up severely being detrimental to my health. And that, all these kind of series of events, I don't mean to kind of like trail off, but all these series of events is really what led me to be here. The quantum aspect of everything is also something that I integrated. So anybody that knows the split, it's a quantum experiment. It's called the dual slit experiment. So basically what it talks about is the light being shined through. At the end of the day, the experiment proves that the observer changes their reality. So me being a seer of different timelines, this is why I hate people when they're like, I hate it when people say, well, you're a fortune teller. No, because chances are the future that I'm going to see is the one that's not going to occur because I've already kind of looked into it, so it's shifted it a little bit. So it's the same with how I live my life. If I'm getting a little bit off track. If I'm going to perceive what I want, how do I explain this? I'm getting a little bit off track. So basically, you can't plan it. You can't plan on living on faith. You have to trust yourself. If you are stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you have people depending on you like children, any parent, for the most part, will tell you this, you'll find a way. You'll find a way to figure it out. If you are going to be stuck in a situation where you're constantly being negative and saying, oh my God, I'm not going to get this done, how am I going to find this? And guess what? You're not going to find it. And I've been there. I've been that person. I remember in 2011, in the middle of my life, just kind of breaking apart, and I would post stuff on Facebook, which really aligned with my belief system at the time. If one more thing happened, if one more thing, went wrong. And guess what? It kept happening. So I had to shift my mind. I got sick and tired of hearing myself bitch about my life. I got sick and tired of letting people that were manipulating me affect my emotions. So I learned to disengage. I learned to, excuse me, to listen to my thoughts. I learned to catch my thoughts. So I've discussed this with many people in the past. I started practicing being aware of what I'm thinking. So as I'm sitting there like doing the dishes and my mind started trailing off on some sort of fight I had with some sort of manipulative situation, and I would sit there and fester over things I could have done or things I should have said, or boundaries I should have set and all that kind of stuff. Well, that doesn't help me. All it does is relive the experience in my head. So if you're going to sit there and think about all the bad things that could happen, that's what you're going to manifest. I'm not any more special than any of you guys. You all have gifts. I have just simply had enough of not using my freedom to be here. So here's another thing, going back to what I said about me being God, you being God, everybody's God. When we pass from here, from this planet, when you die, my belief system is you're perfectly fine. Time doesn't exist, so all the troubles that I went through are not going to be really as significant in a minute scale. It's just going to be like, oh, look at your track record, look at your resume. So why not just go through everything without being so afraid? Why not go through everything realizing that I've overcome everything in the past? Why not go through everything confident in yourself? So I'm not sure if I'm getting my point across. I really kind of sat down here today with no notes on what I'm going to say. I just wanted to talk, and I haven't done that in a while. But yeah, living in faith is not strategic. Living in faith is catching your mind. It's catching your thoughts and realizing that you're headed down a fear path and pulling yourself back out, and realizing that most often the fear path that we walk down is habitual. It's not even our own fears. It's programs put in our minds, whether it's social, oh, you can't leave the country, you can't get a passport. I get that all the time. Oh, you're Canadian, well, you're lucky. Well, I'm sorry, but my parents were immigrants from a country in the 80s that wasn't just handing out passports to everybody. And I'm not, maybe I'm privileged in that way, but no, I'm talking about circumstances. Use your circumstances to do what you can. You don't have to do what I did. So when somebody says to me, well, I live in this country and I can't get a passport, that's great. Don't do what I did. Do what you do. When somebody says to me, well, I need to have this amount of money every month, that's great. Work on what you need to do. But the trick is to catch yourself. Are you looking at it from, well, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this? Or are you looking at it from, how can I figure this out? So when I had no money and I had to pay certain things, I started eliminating things. I started eliminating my internet. I wouldn't pay for internet. But you know what? I was kind with my neighbor, and she gave me her Wi-Fi password, and we exchanged. Same with another neighbor. I didn't have money to go to the laundromat. I had a newborn baby, and I had no money to go to the laundromat. So every time I went to the grocery store, which was like once a week because I had no gas money, my neighbor who was on oxygen tank, I would buy him some groceries, and he would let me use his laundry machine to wash my baby's clothes. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a community around there, but we are too afraid to reach out. When I took my course for how to build a business, I got really lost in the 3D expectations when we hit the point of let's source out, let's market our business, let's find our niche, let's do all this. And I'm like, wow, none of this really resonates with me, because I help on such a general level. Like, you could come to me with any problem and we'll kind of revert everything back to energy. So I can't really specifically say, oh, I can only help you if you're going through this problem, or I can only help you with this problem. But it's also not to say that I can help you necessarily, because we might not jive. So that's going back to what flow means. So if I'm hanging out with someone on a casual basis, and I come home and I'm feeling confused and disoriented and bothered, or walking on eggshells, or anything that's not pleasant, and that goes back to really recognizing how you feel, maybe you shouldn't be hanging out with that person. It's the same with anybody that you want to help. I've had people reach out to me many times, and we kind of get into a conversation, complete strangers, and I'm able to help them, and all of a sudden their questions lead me into, not specifically what they're asking, but the energy of their questions is leading me to feel uncomfortable. And I have to recognize it at that point and say, listen, you know what? I don't think we're aligned anymore. I don't think I can help you. I'm sure that by me stepping away, I can provide the space for someone to come to you that's more appropriately aligned. And that's okay. And I think that's another step to living in faith and living in alignment, is to recognize when you're feeling, how you're feeling, and what you can do about it. We have been conditioned to think that we have to be obligated to a relationship or a friendship or a situation or a home that we live in or a town that we moved into or school our kids go to out of sheer obligation. And really change is so natural in our being that stagnancy is actually detrimental to our health. To stay in the same place and not shift sometimes stores energy, and it can manifest into disease. So, excuse me, as I'm rambling and not drinking my coffee. I hope some of this makes sense to you guys. I mean, obviously skip through this. Don't watch it, doesn't matter. I'm just going to blab on. But I get asked this so many times. I get asked these questions so many times, and I think the conversation is a better way to answer it. It works better if I have some questions coming towards me. I don't see anybody commenting, and if you are, I'm sorry. It might be the way my phone is set up. I will certainly answer questions later. It's not easy to answer a question like this without a conversation because a lot of people don't exist in the reality of such flow. And yeah, to reiterate, I didn't get here overnight. And for me, it wasn't so much a choice. It was more of a necessity. But it was a survival necessity at the time. It was a stubborn survival necessity. You know, I had nobody to help me. But I had been hurt so many times that I wouldn't even ask. Like, for example, the country I come from has a government assistance program that I didn't even reach out to until the very end of me being in Canada, because I was always taught that, you know, lazy people reach out to government assistance. And meanwhile, I've been working full-time since I was 16. It was stupid for me to think that. So something really kind of scary happened. I got a phone call from my ex-husband's mother about a year and a half before I left Canada. Long story short, they were just not telling me the truth, and they had just approached with all this fear. But it kind of like rocked my reality at the time. They had said that I wouldn't see, my daughter wouldn't see her father ever again, and blah, 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 blah. And I think it kind of made me feel like even more isolated. Not that they were financially helping me or anything, but I think the reality of one more person gone out of my kids' lives really hit me. And I reached out to a government assistance program at the time, and the lady helped me so quick. I swear I smacked myself saying, why didn't I reach out sooner and suffer for so long and pinch pennies just to get my kids like a diaper or some pasta or some any food, and all I had to do was reach out. So that's another thing in terms of flowing, is reach out to your resources. I went through family court and defended myself a lot for most of my court experience actually was me defending myself. And that's another thing that a lot of people talk about with me, and it's like, oh, how did you do that? And that was, again, out of necessity. My original court case, I had a lawyer that was given to me through the government because I was technically unemployed. I had just been laid off. Again, through my ex-husband getting me fired. And the lawyer was actually working with my ex-husband's lawyer. So I fired him. Long story short, I fired him. And out of necessity, I had to get resourceful. So I found out that by getting resourceful and getting free consultation from lawyers from all different places like women's shelters and family law offices. So these are all free resources that are available. But had I still been in my job and focused on money and all that, I would have gone through the money route. I would have paid thousands out my nose to like some lawyer that probably didn't even listen to my case. And I probably would have lost everything too. Not that I really came out winning, but I came out with a freedom that I never expected. And all because, again, I shifted my mind. I'm like, well, how am I going to get this done? What do I really want? I just want to be free. I gave up money. I didn't want money from my exes. I didn't want control. I even offered access, but again, I did it with boundaries. I'm like, here are parents that haven't been in their lives. What's the most appropriate way to do this where I have boundaries and I'm also authentic with them, is offer them access, but supervised access, which ended up not giving them access at all because of their own things. But it all ties in together of your intentions has to be clear. Your resourcefulness has to be unafraid. I want to say unapologetic. Unafraid, because we've been conditioned to not reach out for help. We've been conditioned to just take it. We've been conditioned to just, well, this is the way it has to be. Does it? You know, my ex was fighting me because I moved to a cheaper town, and he was fighting me and fighting me and fighting me for years in court. He's like, no, she has to drive my daughter all the way to Toronto, which I'm like, I can't afford. Maybe if you paid me child support, I could afford gas money. Like I was, but then I changed my mindset. I'm like, no, like this is where she lives. I'm her primary caregiver, blah, 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 blah. Within a year, I find out that pretty much 2/3 of his family had moved into the same town. So my point being, had I allowed the fear to have me pack up and do as he said, I would have been stuck. I would have had no money. I would have been in a horrible environment. I would have been living in the city, which has no nature and all. But instead, I'm like, no, let me do my research. And I did do my research. And I looked into it. And what I was doing was not wrong. I was just being bullied. But I had to flip my mind to, you know, where are my fears coming from? Are they my fears? Are they somebody else's fears? It's the same with my travel. What are my fears coming from? Is it like when I came to Mexico, so many people were like, don't go to Mexico. Da, 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 da. Mexico is so safe. It's safer than Toronto in my experience. They weren't my fears. Same with the business. When I first started that course, I was like, oh my God, like I need to have a structure. I need to roll out a plan. But then I'm like, I had to pull myself. It took me like a month to get out of that 3D reality and pull myself back to where I was. I'm like, no, I don't need to do it the way anybody says I have to do it, because I live in a world that didn't exist for so long. So even what I want to do, there's no words to what I'm doing. This is probably why I'm rambling on for so long. Living in faith, living in a higher dimension, which is really just a broader perspective, is all about being present, investigating your feelings, realizing, are your feelings stemming from programming, and kind of dissect that as well. And after all that, you realize that we are so able to do so many things that you would never think, because we're told that we can't. School is a great example of that. So I unschool my kids, and it wasn't always the case. My daughter went to school. She went to daycare as a age 1, and she was in school up until grade 3. And we didn't really discuss unschooling until grade 1, and she would beg me. It's like, Mom, unschool me. And I was like, dude, I'm not ready. Like, I have a newborn. I'm going through stuff. I don't have the attention span to sit here with you and teach you math and teach you how to read and teach you how to write. So by grade 3, we ended up pulling her out. And again, it wasn't even intentional. I started getting these intuition feelings, and I'll get into that another day. But by Christmas, after her birthday, by Christmas, she never went back to school. And we decided to just do 1 year of deschooling, because I had no idea what I was going to do with her. So again, I lived in faith. I started researching and realized things that felt true was a child that learns at home is not under any sort of structure, that they need to be on a timetable, that they need to learn to read at a certain time, or they learn it as they go. So I'm like, well, let's just deschool, let's put my fears on pause. And it was the same thing. Within a few months, we realized that just living was what we needed. We realized just pushing past the programming fear, our way of doing things, which was no way, it was just living, was right. Like, as humans, we have been conditioned that we have to abide by certain cultural rules and certain programmed laws that don't even exist. Like, you have to love your family no matter how they treat you. You have to stay in the country because it's a good country, says your government. I don't know. Like, you don't have to do any of that just because somebody says. Pushing past your fears, for me, really was a process of seeing that abiding by everybody's rules didn't get me anywhere. Up until I was 30, I did everything by the book. I crossed all my T's, I dotted all my I's, all my finances were impeccable, I did my job as I was told for the most part. I got married like I was supposed to, I had a kid like I was supposed to, God forbid, do it the way I want to do it. I treated my husband like I was supposed to, my parents, and none of it worked out. All of it made me ill, all of it made me sick, all of it made me angry, all of it made me alone, all of it made me sad. And now I've been living this life for a couple years now, and I have so many people that still message me, and they're like, oh, you travel with no husband? You don't actually have a job? And as soon as I kind of hear that dialogue from them, I'm like, okay, we don't live in the same reality. take what resonates, leave the rest, but I don't live in the three-dimensional world of fear and expectations anymore. And I think I'm going to end this video really by saying, because I babbled enough, the reason I don't live in fear and expectations anymore is because it didn't serve me. Fears and expectations gave me disappointments. They provided me a space where I didn't feel comfortable. I walked on eggshells because I did what other people wanted me to do. When I started doing what I wanted to do out of necessity, because I had no choice, I realized that it got me further because I had, I had nobody else's intentions on me. It was my intentions. And again, I had to clear my intentions because at one point my intentions were anger, in my court cases. Very early on, it was, I needed justice, how could I have been so mistreated and he can get away with it? But that didn't help me. It didn't do anything for me. It just brought me down into their level. When it came to explaining how I lived my life, like I started explaining, well, in human form, like in 3D form, well, I live my life like, no, I don't live my life the way you want me to. I live my life completely free of any sort of expectations. Even right now, my visa is expiring in less than 2 weeks. And I got caught up in making plans. So 3D. I got caught up in, okay, I have to book. So then I started booking for Greece, and that didn't work. The ticket prices went up. Then I'm like, okay, let me go through Spain. And I literally went to book it, and the universe just kept canceling my tickets. Then I even went to book for Canada to go visit family. Not family, but like friends. And again, it wasn't being pushed through. The transaction wasn't being pushed through. I found out the quarantine rules were way stricter than I had anticipated. It just wasn't meant to be. So I spent the last several days bringing myself back to me. And this was the practice of, why am I getting caught up in planning? That's not flow. That's me hearing a date. Your visa expires on this date. You have to do this. Very 3D. So I spent the last few days going back to my journals, going back to my notes, and my whole intention for this traveling. And then I'm like, okay, let's get resourceful. So I looked into it. What does it really cost to go over your visa? It doesn't really cost that much to stay here longer. Can I just stay in this house? Yes, I'm actually welcomed by the person that I'm house sitting to stay here longer because she's staying in her country a little longer. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. So take away that fear. I'm not being rushed out of the country. I'm not being rushed out of the house. Next, I wanted to go to Canada before the weather went bad. Okay, well, nothing's permanent. So even if I go to Canada later and I don't stay long enough, great. What if I go to Canada and I want to stay there when it gets colder and I don't have winter clothes? Okay, well, I'm starting to go back into my past, finding winter clothes in, Value Village sort of place, or used clothing, or, the community. Simple, no problem. Perfect. So what are the fears? There are no fears. If you start dissecting what you're really afraid of, usually you'll find out that you're not afraid of anything. Going back to my service. So I serve on donation. So what that means is I have a PayPal account that people are free to donate because they feel maybe gratitude to my service, or because they want to donate to the adventures that they watch on with me and my kids, for whatever reason. And I get donations very sporadically, very random, not sporadically, randomly, that's the word. I'll wake up and I'll have money here, and then a couple weeks nothing, and then boom, boom, boom. And it has nothing to do with the series of events that took place in my actual life. I could have helped 10 people in one day, and they don't coincide with when I get donations. And again, that goes back to, I don't expect it. One is not tied with the other, because when I am helping people, when I'm of service, I get reimbursed anyways. I don't like that word. So, and I realized this very early on, that again, it goes back to energy. So when I'm helping, it clears my energy because it's selfless, it's aligned, and it's in the moment. It's clear, right? The frequency is clear. So all these things. So, and I believe, I have a lot of faith. So when you open such a channel, you're provided for anyway. So if you're already God and I'm God and we're all God, and we get back to source and we realize that our human existence is really just an experience, what are we afraid of? That we're going to run out of money and become homeless? My fears already put me in that position in 2012, so that doesn't really affect me anymore, because I realized that Yes, quickly you can become homeless. Yes, quickly you can also be from a happy marriage to a completely abomination of a relationship. Yes, from, within 2 seconds you can have a family and then have nobody. So a lot of light workers have already gone through a lot of bad experiences. So why not use that to fuel us? Why not use that to show ourselves how strong we are, how much we can overcome things? I think it's really just goes back to your mindset. You can look at all the things that you've gone through and be like, oh, poor me, poor me. I've done that. Sure. Or you can go through them. Actually, I did this weekend. And list all the things that you've overcome. And you'd be surprised how powerful you feel when you word things not as, oh, I was in an abusive relationship, or I was this, or instead, I regained self-love, the concept of self-love, and I realigned with my purpose, and, I practice boundaries, and just anything that really demonstrates how far you've come versus how low you got. I definitely feel like I'm rambling on. You guys get to watch me just ramble and take me an hour to roll this joint. I don't know what else to say. Honestly, the concept of living in faith is probably best described in conversation with questions. I think I might need to do a chat room. If you got, you know what, that's just it. If you guys are interested in a chat room, since I know how it works now with Facebook, let's do that. Let's get a bunch of us on there and we can discuss this topic in greater detail, because I definitely feel like I'm just rambling on. Thank you for anybody that's watched. My reality is easy to understand when you remove the limitations that were put on us. And yes, I often get caught up in 3D too, and I just have to remind myself that at the end of the day, we are protected beyond the expectations. So protected doesn't mean that you won't get hurt, because even if you die, you're not really hurt. It's just your physical body. So everything is an experience, everything is a lesson, everything is an opportunity for growth. So why not just walk through them, the experiences, with gusto and faith in yourself, instead of, oh no, oh no. Because I've done oh no, how am I going to do this? And you know what? You never figure it out, because you're always thinking of the worst, at least for me. So when you start thinking of all the things that you have accomplished and start talking kindly to yourself and all the amazing things that you have grown with, then you'll find the answers. I'm going to end it there, because I don't know how clear I was in my message. I really think we can benefit from a group discussion versus me just talking. I work best in communication that way. A lot of you that have worked with me with my intuitive guiding will know this. Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to send you guys all love. It's Saturday. It feels like Sunday to me. Things are happening. A lot of things are happening. And going back to me actually leaving Mexico, it's probably not happening right away, because me and my daughter, I keep getting told to just wait, because a lot of things are happening in the three-dimensional world that's going to shift. Like, for example, me going to Canada right now requires quarantine measures. Yeah, I think that's gonna change. And I'll leave it at that. Okay. I love you guys. Thank you for letting me blab. I will do more videos. This was the first one in a long time, so I just kind of really more needed to get myself on here. But please, if you're interested in like a group setting video chat, I'm down. I think a lot more can get discussed that way. Bye.